Economics students, today we're going to talk about the characteristics of free enterprise. The last couple of days we were talking about the different types of economic systems, such as command economies and traditional economies in particular, and we took quite a fairly detailed look at one of those types of command economies, and that is communism. Well, today we're going to leave those types of systems and get into free enterprise. And really, for the rest of this semester, we're going to be focusing on free enterprise. Granted, we are in a mixed economic system here in the United States, but our mixed economic system is very heavily weighted toward free enterprise. And so with that being said, let's focus on the characteristics of free enterprise. First of all, the first characteristic would be opportunity. That is, you have the freedom to engage in the economic activity of your choice. So you might choose to engage in a trade, such as a shoe repairman, a cobbler. That's his perfect choice, and you have the freedom to do that if you want. You may choose to be an architect and go to school and get all the necessary education to be an architect. If I lived in a second life, I might choose to be someone who does whitewater rafting, who takes, runs an outfitting organization to take people whitewater rafting. I think that would be awesome. And so maybe in my next life, that's what I will do. But regardless, you have the freedom to engage in the economic activity of your choice. Now, that doesn't mean you will be successful in whatever choice you make. I doubt if I would be a successful whitewater rafting guide today because I don't have, frankly, the skills that would be necessary, probably not the endurance either as someone who is in his 60s. But nevertheless, I have the freedom to try it should I decide to do so. Another characteristic of free enterprise is the characteristic of incentives. And incentives are simply rewards or costs associated with a specific behavior. So that means that incentive could be a positive incentive, a reward, or it could be a negative incentive, which involves a cost to you of some sort. So the question is, what would be the most obvious incentive in the free market system? Well, if you think about it, the most obvious incentive is the ability to make money, to choose an economic activity which enables you to make money to live comfortably. So in a free enterprise system, that is a driving element, is that ability to make money. There are non-monetary incentives. Can you think of any? One obvious one would be just the sense of satisfaction of being happy in what you do with your life. I mean, let's face it, work is a big part of our lives. So you want to engage in the type of work that gives you some sort of innate, inherent feeling of happiness, some system, some element of job satisfaction is absolutely necessary to be happy in life. So that's a non-monetary incentive, doing something that you enjoy, for sure. Okay. Are there negative incentives in our free market system? Certainly there are. A negative incentive is the possibility that if you're an entrepreneur, you could go bankrupt. You may not make money, and you could lose money, and that is most definitely a very important negative incentive. That's why not everyone out there is an entrepreneur starting their own business. There's a strong likelihood of failure. And that's true in any kind of job, not just in entrepreneurial type activities. So yes, there are negative incentives in the free market system, typically around the idea of failure and what you're trying to do. Okay, profit, again, that was one of those positive incentives, and so it's directly related to the idea of incentives. And profit, of course, is the ability to make money from your economic activity. And this profit motive does involve some advantages, okay? Businesses have to have financial discipline. They can't waste the resources. And that's a social good. You do not want businesses wasting our limited resources. Resources are limited. Remember, we live in a world dominated by scarcity. So we want to make sure that we're not being wasteful. Businesses must have financial discipline. They cannot be wasteful. It does encourage entrepreneurship. Most growth in our economy happens as a result of successful entrepreneurship, whether that's innovation or imagination or management skills. This profit motive, the ability to make money, encourages entrepreneurship, and that's really what drives growth in our economy. And related to this financial discipline and entrepreneurship is that the profit motive improves productivity by rewarding successful companies and forcing the inefficient ones out. Those companies that are not good at managing the scarce resources are forced out of business. And I have a picture up here of two grocery store chains. I don't know if you're even familiar with the Safeway chain. It's almost non-existent today, but when I was in high school, Safeway was one of the 2 or 3 largest retail operations, not just groceries, but any retail operation, one of the 3 largest in the world. And now Safeway is almost gone. They could not change with the times. They became inefficient and they've been forced out of business and replaced by companies that do it better, such as Myers, which is growing very, very rapidly across the country. Just 15 years ago, there was not a Myers there was not a Myers in Rockford. Now we've got a couple in Winnebago County. So improving productivity by rewarding successful companies and forcing those inefficient ones out. Okay, another characteristic is competition. And competition, again, results from the idea of scarcity. We have scarce resources, so those who want to use the resources must compete with each other because there's not enough resources for everyone. There are 2 forms of competition. Market competition is competition for buyers. And you see this picture here. Even though these various fast food chains don't sell the same type of food, I would say that they're all competing for the same buyer. And who is that buyer? That's someone who wants a quick, low-cost meal. Okay, so they don't really care if it's going to be a taco or a Big Mac or whatever kind of burger. They're just people who go here looking for a quick, low-cost meal. So all of these chains, even though they make different types of food, are competing for the same buyers. That's market competition, but there's also resource competition where the companies are competing with each other for the resources that are available. Remember, resources are scarce. And here we have a picture, I think, that illustrates that quite well. We have a new residential development being built here with new streets, and I'm sure new houses are going to be going up very soon on these streets. Well, the developer of this land is competing to get the land with the farmers who have been on the land before. So farmers and urban developers are competing for that scarce resource, which is land, okay, in this picture. Sellers engage in competition. So when they're engaging in competition, trying to get people to buy from them as opposed to buying from someone else, that's where you have price competition, advertising low prices. That's a way of engaging in competition. Buyers engage in competition as well. Remember, a lot of times, especially when a new product is introduced into the market, there's a limit to the number of those products available. Not everyone who wants the new MacBook is going to be able to get the new MacBook. So the buyers are lining up hoping they will get one of those new MacBooks. There's a limit to the number that are available. So buyers here are engaging in competition and sellers engage in it as well. The effects of competition are really quite interesting. For sellers, competition isn't necessarily a good thing from the seller's perspective because it does lower their profit, but it forces them to be innovative and improve efficiencies, and that's good from a social standpoint. Society wants better innovation, better efficiency. It's good for society. And so competition helps to force sellers into innovation and efficiency, but that does come at the cost of lower profit for the seller. For the buyer, it's all pretty good usually. Lower prices, we get more choices, and typically we get better quality. Now, I did put a little asterisk next to quality. Kind of interesting because I came from the telecom industry. Before I was a teacher, I was in the telecommunications industry. And for much of my life, my childhood, phones looked a lot like this. This was a tremendous phone. I could pick it up and I could talk to someone anywhere in the world virtually. Okay, think about that. How amazing is that I could sit in Texas and talk to someone in China if I wanted to using that device there. It's amazing. So that was a telephone. Not only was it an amazing that it could facilitate that kind of long distance communication, it was also virtually indestructible. You could drop this thing and it would not break. In fact, an experiment was once conducted where a big 18-wheeler truck drove over one of these phones and the phone did not break. It could still be used afterwards. These things were indestructible. But do you want that kind of phone today? Probably not. Today, everyone uses some version of that you see in the bottom picture. Now, I can guarantee you that this phone on the bottom picture is not indestructible. If an 18-wheeler truck drives over that, that phone will no longer work. But that phone does so much more, of course, than this old traditional telephone. So, yeah, competition made this device possible. Without competition, we would probably be still using this, as we did for about 100 years. Okay, along those same lines, beating a dead horse here, we talked a little bit about the Trabant. Without competition, this is what someone who wanted a car was forced to buy if you lived in communist East Germany. At the same time, this, by the way, is a 1980 model. At the same time, in Western Germany, they were driving BMWs that looked like this, or Mercedes-Benzes that looked like this. These were 100 times better than that car. These cars down here were the result of competition. Okay, another characteristic of free enterprise, legal equality. Ideally, everyone should have the same legal rights. And if people do not have the same legal rights, it hurts the economy. And I have a couple of pictures here. This picture here, I believe, was taken in the deep south of the United States back in the 1940s when you had segregation in the workforce. And this picture here is taken in a more modern time in India, where again you have that caste system, which puts some unofficial, informal limits on the economic freedom that people have in India. And both of these systems, segregated workforce where blacks were prevented from types of jobs, hurt the economy of these areas. The southern economy that had segregation lagged behind the northern economy for a long, long time, largely due to the segregated workforce that did not give legal equality, and that still exists in other parts of the world today. Another characteristic very important is private property. We do better when private property exists. Private property are resources that are owned by individuals or businesses, and this could very well be the most important characteristic of free enterprise. And in America, 90% of all goods and services are produced by privately owned businesses. There are some goods and services produced by the government, but 90% is by privately owned companies. Therefore, we are largely a private enterprise society. And you don't need to write this down, but it is the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution that guarantees that we will have private property in the United States. Okay, getting close to the end. Economic freedom. There are two aspects to economic freedom. First of all, free contract. People are free to decide who they wish to do business with. So I gave a couple of examples. A musician can choose where he wishes to play, or who he wants to use as a manager, or which record label to use. He has the freedom to make those choices. That's economic freedom, free contract. And another element of economic freedom is something called voluntary exchange, where consumers and producers choose what, when, and how they will buy and sell. And the truth of the matter is, voluntary exchange is really the primary driver of wealth in our society. It's not what causes the economy to grow, but it is what causes people who live in a society to become wealthier through voluntary exchange. And we're going to actually spend the class period on this idea of voluntary exchange. So I'm going to stop this presentation right here. A good place to end it. Just remember that you need to make sure you get down all of these elements of free enterprise, and we're going to hit voluntary exchange again pretty hard, and hopefully in a way that you will find interesting and enjoyable. And that's coming up very soon. And with that, we'll stop this presentation, check Canvas and see if there's an assignment there. I can't remember if there is or not. You guys have a great day.